So we are now moving to the panel discussion in which we will look at convergence points between all these approaches from law to data visualization. We will also question how they fit together under the hood of more than planet, and how this program might help to cast a fresh look upon oceans and the way we think about them. But first, Marco is going to give us a bit of a summary of what was said during the afternoon.
Maybe.
No,
it was quite an afternoon, actually. So, yes, a few very critical, kind of important questions came to mind while listening to the presentations. And we also have some questions regarding that. But I would like to start kind of at the beginning, where there were a few openings around, even though we changed the beginning, but we started with the law and the commons, the international law, and which reminded us that there is kind of also a legal basis for everything that is happening in this context, yeah, especially when dealing with outer space. And one of the interesting things about international space law, which is really important to understand how still flawed it is, flawed, pun not intended, that basically it does not, international space law essentially allows for the destruction of satellites in space. I don't know, this is a curiosity, it's very interesting. Those of you who know me a little bit better know that I have kind of my bellicose interests. And so the destruction of satellites has always been my interest, not because I want to distract them, but because they are so vulnerable, yeah? And then I dug a little bit deeper and of course realized, yes, actually it's allowed. And it's allowed because, of course, the treaty was signed first in '67 by the then Soviet Union, United States, and Great Britain. And Soviet Union already in the '70s started experimenting with kinetic destruction of satellites, with kind of satellite friends that were launched in the same orbit and so on, and then exploded. Those of you who have watched maybe the weird Hollywood movie Gravity, yeah, you have heard about this Kessler syndrome, which is, of course, a syndrome that as you can produce a lot of debris with satellites, and this debris in our orbit will, of course, exponentially rise and create more debris and more debris and more debris until all of the space objects will be colliding with each other. This is a physical possibility if a real kind of destructive kinetic conflict happens in space. Now, this is interesting from many aspects, but mostly because it again brings also this incredible feature of humanity into space. Yeah, the fantastic ability of self-destruction and self-harm of our civilization. And we have heard here today a lot of kind of observations, or essentially that we're looking at the processes that are connected with disability, yeah? And as I said already in the morning, and Micha then explained how the stack actually works, we have at our disposal incredible amount of data input, yeah, to understand even better, because More Than Planet is really about imagining potentialities that are moving away from these destructive, let's say, forces. And we heard about one of the questions I have later for Xavier was you used the word citizenship several times. Again, citizenship is a very interesting concept that has a lot to do with kind of a civic responsibility and also of the organization, of the political organization of our planet. And I was wondering what is, and this is my question for you later, what is citizenship really in the context of Laboratory Planet? How do you define it? Because I assume it's not the citizenship that we are all accustomed to understand. The other thing that is really important, and this is kind of very elementary to, again, the basic tenets of why this project was conceived as it was, is, of course, the notion of data integrity. The idea of understanding where the data that we use comes from, how do we use it, what does it really mean, and how do we interpret it, yeah? And there is a lot of space for very aesthetic interpretations and so on, ad infinitum to say, but it's, again, it's very, very important to understand that. And I have a few examples later, maybe I'll show, maybe not, where you can find this data to kind of work with. The next thing that is also quite interesting for me, again, coming from, let's say, another world, yeah, the other side, the dark side, let's call it, yeah. It's, some of you, is anybody familiar with the term kill chain? Kill chain, maybe some heard it before, yeah. It's a term from, it's a military technical term, yeah. Essentially, 3 points in the kill chain: observe, decide, act, yeah. Then the final is usually act upon the observed physically with kinetic energy and so on for destruction. But the observe, decide, act is also in a way super present in everything that we heard today, yeah. Not finding anything new here, right? It's kind of a logic of human thinking in a way, but we are reproducing very, very similar forms and patterns and processes that are also the ones that we are actively kind of trying to study to understand why they are so over-present in our realities. Let me see my crazy notes here. Well, we will also then, from some of the notes, we will also ask questions as we discussed before. I have one question which I will ask later. You know, the word provocation was used with this innovation several times. My, of course, immediate question is provoking who and why, and I'm sure I will get an answer on that one later. And when we talk about solar currency, my immediate kind of, you know, energy exchange mind said, well, we okay, understand, but and wheat and so on, but what about water? Yeah, water was not mentioned somehow, but it's kind of implicit in the cycle, I understand. But it was interesting that solar share and water, maybe solar share and water share is something to think about, yeah, because water is really critical. And of course, you know, algae, for algae too. So one other notion that was mentioned several times in different contexts is also something that is connected to the term of adaptation, yeah? We humans have the belief that we can adapt, and we do. I mean, it's belief based in completely empirical facts that adaptation is really a very, very strong ability of living organisms in general to adapt to changing conditions, and so do we all the time. Part of this adaptation is also in a way, what we are doing with all of these sensors that we are installing, launching, guiding, and so on, and not only from space to look down, but also, you know, into the rest of our solar system, and two of them even beyond now, to basically understand. It's part of our adaptation. To get to knowledge through this adaptation. But adaptation is really, really crucial term, because it on one side, it enables the continuation of survival and so on. Even in one of our essays from More Than Planet, let's say the opposite side is called the American way of life, consumption. I think ideologically to always talk about America is a big problem of us Europeans, you know. We have to, you know, we exported America to America. Let's be very clear about this. Yeah, America was not inhabited by Europeans even 400 years ago. So it's very important not to be so judgmental. And last but not least, the guillotine was mentioned. Come on, we're in Paris. We were waiting for that moment, and it happened yet again. And it's true. We do live in a time of, and I want to hear more also about the analysis of the social cost of climate change. But the social cost of everything, let's call it, is also connected to a very, very basic economical fact that less than 0.1% of humanity controls the resources. I don't know the number, so I won't say a number, but we know a vast majority of resources and economy on the planet. We created these fantastic conditions that we are living in this new feudalism, essentially, yeah? We have a class of untouchables. Look at what's happening all around the world now with the dissolution of democracies, the democracies that, what was the term before? Now that there was something about that we are decarbonizing, and the democracies are getting decarbonized, sort of. We are trying to. But we are, on one side, we have this dissolution of democracies that are semi-conscious about, the burden of carbon on the planetary systems. And on the other hand, of course, we have the big push still towards consumption, the completely bizarre pushes with electrification of transport, especially personal, which has enormous environmental costs that are sort of hidden. I mean, not so hidden. If you look a little bit under the hood, you understand that they're not hidden, but we tend to ignore them. Democracies tend to ignore them. And we tend to, of course, find new heroes in the 0.1%, like our colleague Elon Musk and his kind of small cabal of rather dangerous characters, let's say. Not that they need to go under guillotine. I'm not advocating that, but some re-education would help. In that sense, it would be good to have a debate with these characters. In any case, I think we really heard a lot, and at the end, it was also really nice that Federico presented what their company is doing and how they're basically making remote sensing assets and analytics available for all kinds of, let's call them, good causes. Yeah, and I think that's a really good model of acting. In the end, it's all about the integrity of this data and how we use this data. So yeah, it's been an exciting afternoon. I'm sure we will continue now even deeper into this, but I'll end here because my time is definitely out for this recap, and since we also have to leave some space for the public, yeah, for later. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to ask a first question? Go ahead. Okay. Okay. So, well, I'm going with the first question. Some of you work with models. Can you explain the advantage and limits of using these methods? What can models do and not do?
Yes, so actually, when we started the work on the shadow growth project that we just mentioned, we had intensive discussions with Maria and Baruch about exactly that, what models can do and can't do, and how models are hiding things at the same time that they pretend to reveal things. So in a way, we developed an analogy or a way to visualize what models do and can't do, in a way that if you think about a complex object in front of you, models are always, in a sense, a light projected on this object. And all you can get is the shadow of what the model is trying to observe. But you will never get a sense of the full complexity of the topic you're trying to address. You will decide of things that you accept to lose in the process of enlightening this object. And we really started to see models in this way. And that's how we started to play with multiple models and putting models in contrast, in paradoxes, in tensions. And that's how, maybe as artists, we have this flexibility to play with models and embracing the fact that they are unsatisfying, that they are always missing the point in some places. And that analogy with shadows and the fact that they are always unsatisfactory is something very productive to us, because once you accept that, then it becomes a playful space.
Yeah, I would just add that all models have their problems, but models are and the visualizations that we generate from them are operative socially and culturally, right? So that's one of the aspects when we developed the Shadow Growth project. It was for the Photographers Gallery in London. So we were consciously thinking about how images circulate in social media, etc., to help catalyze debates and help general people convince their friends or help their friends come around to some understanding of the world. So to understand the social life of images in that sense, so that the images are not just images that represent the world, but they actually are instrumental. They have a social function, and that's something that we like to explore through various models, how the images that they create in other forms.
Models. I'm an architect, so I think models are our bread and butter. A model, of course, doesn't have every feature. For instance, a planetary model doesn't have any serious attempt to tell us what moves planets. It describes movement, but doesn't tell us much about what moves. So the question about what makes visible and invisible, I think it's obviously outside the model. But in the model, like in every proper architecture, there's always a drive of a cosmological projection of humans into their models. It's a really architectural dimension. You build a temple in proportions that are similar to what you think the cosmos is built upon. So I think that there's a double condition. It's not just an instrumentality of the model. It's a real attachment that produces energies in two directions, towards what we conceptualize as outside, but also what keeps us together, which I think is an aesthetical dimension. Images keep things together, and the amazing thing of contemporary complex Earth models is that they are simultaneously very abstract and have affect. So they're very strange images. And I think that we haven't yet come to completely understand how to handle, how to operate as artists, as scientists, as citizens that space of the image that is measured and has affect. I think that is where, in my mind, the entire Earth observation has a true potential to re-articulate some of the discussions on culture.
No, I would like to add, I fully agree on what previous was said. From our side, that we actually always work just with models. This is what we do, like it's always models, pipelines, workflows to solve a task. And that's why it's important as a, entity that we want to give insights on a certain topic or a certain solution, is to talk about accuracy. And this is always done with whatever layers is produced. So if we always say that, satellites don't lie. So if there is let's say, a deforestation event, most likely is true. You can see, you can go back in time when the acquisition was taken. But the model that recognizes that can have some inaccuracy levels or details that can be missed. And then it's important as well to instruct a client or partners or whoever is using this data, municipalities, entities, in terms of when we present a map that is a probability map, for example, we can't give say for sure that that is what is being detected by the model, because there will be anyway a certain level of inaccuracy. And the fact that we don't know often comes as well from specific technology as well too. Just I can think about deep learning based models where it's a black box. You put the data, you put training samples, and just try to analyze and understand how the model worked with different filters, but it's never what we're as a data scientist, we're never sure 100% what the model is actually doing. So indeed, I think the key there is to be honest, first of all, in what is produced. I'm always skeptical from whoever say that has the truth in their hands. There is always a simplification of the actual reality. And obviously it's better than nothing, but still be honest with saying what are the possibility and the limitations.
So sorry. And from these your answers, is there also a place for what is not known, and can the unknown be a fertile ground also to think about oceans, as they are often the link that is made between space exploration and ocean is that it's like new frontier where we don't know that much about them. And is there something that can be fertile to think the ocean in the unknown? Maybe Xavier, you have something to say about what is not known. I don't know. And how.
Maybe I have a way to transition to Xavier, because I think it connects. Basically, the unknown is in big part as well the question of not quantities but qualities. And that's a discussion we started a month ago with Xavier on those topics of quantification. Because when we quantify, models are quantifying a lot of things, processing a lot of things. And what falls apart in this type of model is often the question of qualities, you know? And that's another level of subtlety that is harder to grasp. And that I know that Xavier has a lot to say on that.
Yes, it's clear that there is a difference of condition between to be administrated and to be citizen. And for me, it's the same. It's the question of modelization or quantification. It's the question of the imperialism of data and the way we are and we participate to our own administration, and to the aesthetization also of the administration, and not to reactivation our subjectivities, collective subjectivities, and also ontological subjectivities with other bodies and also with machines or other species.
Yeah, I think part of our practice goes in two ways, in the sense that, you know, well, a model has an agenda of control on it. You produce a model, or you want to generate an area where you have kind of mastery or some kind of understanding in order to execute mastery over a terrain. So, or an ocean, I don't know what the terrain is, not the right word. Yeah, so we explore that, first of all, that we try to develop new models that try to encounter, and that's in this case with the water aqua culture and generating life, the way that that we depend on the ocean. We're going to be generating new models for that, but also we dare to take models that already exist and take the data and be opinionated about it. So not to just try to be neutral, but actually try to provide. Yeah, we try to interpret things according to our agenda that are based on the scientific model.
Ça y est, oui.
I think that the question is really a marker of a major shift that we are encountering. The questions many of us have grown into understanding science with was the idea of a fact, of truth. And the paradoxical condition that we are in is that science is no longer simply interested in the world as it is, the domain of reality, but scientists are telling everyone that we should change our lives, which is the world as it could be or as it ought to be, which is the definition of politics. And the distinction between the two really relies on facts, opinions. Now, the uncertainty is usually in relationship to facts, a question that is seen in modeling, in accuracy, in producing more and more, say, resolution, more and more certitude. In the world of politics, uncertainty is equally a problem of representation. Did we hear everyone? Did we seriously listen to those who tell us that they have not been listened? You know? It's a question of double representation. And you mentioned Bruno, my dear friend Bruno, earlier. Now, the interesting thing about science, taken from the contemporary condition, is that the unknown is that thing that we are coexistent with, the Earth. So we are in a very strange situation where science has been predicted out of certitude, the escape of the unknown, and now it's through science, through Lovelock, through Margulis, through very complex models, is that we're discovering that we don't know anything. And this is really an interesting situation because we are, I think, for the first time, understanding that the conditions, let's say, of, you mentioned the kill cycle. You could also see that as a typical diagram of the Enlightenment. You have to imagine that you're empty, your mind is empty until you perceive something, and then you can act. Suddenly we are in a different situation. We know more that we, by acting more. So what we know about climate change which is so little, is because we've acted, not because we have to act. So there's a condition which is similar to what Bruno would have called retroactive causality, which is a really strange situation where we, at some point in our observation, move from observing actions to model cause and effect. And I think that is where I think we have to be alert. I think it's where the unknown and not knowing, the uncertitude could really help us. And I think that's where your question to me resonates in a very important way with larger discussions about the role of culture in shaping politics.
Yeah, I have a question which is a bit for everybody, but also representing Elena Siakovic, which couldn't be the final discussion. I wanted to use this question of what she brought is more than planetarity in the cosmo-legal approach. Yesterday we had Sébastien Dutreuil who was talking about the Earth system, when we went from Gaia theory to Earth system sciences. And what Elena was bringing is this, this separation between the, let's say, the outer space law and the ocean law, and how is this much more porous, or how do we look at the planetary or Earth system through a cosmo-legal approach to the, and how actually the ocean are feeding it's not creating our atmosphere, and even our endeavors, human endeavors, go to outer space with debris. And so I wanted to ask maybe with John as well, because you mentioned Bruno Latour, how is this questioning the notion of the critical zone, and this is through this cosmo-legal approach we have maybe a more porous vision of what is actually our living space, this critical zone with this relation with outer space, direct outer space, the orbit, the moon. And so both ways, I mean, it relates also to this ocean to space, space to ocean discussion. And maybe you have something to say about this critical zone related to that issue.
The critical zone is the simultaneous object of study of, say, earth sciences and a network of observers of that object. So the critical zone and the critical zone networks were established as a conceptual operation through which Earth system sciences moved away and from a previous planetary dimension, started understanding relations between, say, the lithosphere and the biosphere, the lithosphere, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere. The idea is that there is a very thin layer. It's like the skin of an apple, and that's the only entity that is alive in the universe. And we have almost no idea about how this very thin layer, which is the surface of our planet, from a few kilometers down, maybe 12, 13 kilometers down where we still have bacteria, all the way to the top of the trees, is the only thing that is alive in the universe.
Well, you have life in stratosphere, bacteria, and
very little, very little. Yeah. So the question is, and it's a very strange inversion of the planetary view, which is a section.
Yeah, my question is like, is there more porosity? Because it's a tendency to,
but this is the
be
interesting element.
A bit closed space.
But the moment that there is a section, and you understand that we only have this very small condition of inhabitation, you suddenly realize that the notion of enclosure is important. We are within. that space. It's us being within that very thin space. So the question maybe of porosity that you mentioned, in my understanding, is also shifted. And it's no longer a question of porosity of a human space or a control space versus and having the fluxes in between, but it's also a question that you have simultaneous multiplications of porosities within the critical zone, and there's no external factor, including there's no external agent, which is what is
but life
is indicated as a secular dimension of the
life is still also dependent what comes from outer space, whether it's the sun energy,
from sun,
solar waves, or
that's the critical zone. It's irradiated and sucks out at different speeds, recycles, changes the entire idea of temporality of and what until now we've thought of the Earth as a globe. And the critical zone is a way in which we start understanding simultaneously the fragility of that condition, extremely porous, extremely open. Actually, I think it's open internally, but has this limits of fragility. And I think the most important aspect, the political aspect of the critical zone, and in particular, my understanding of how Bruno wanted to mobilize this, were the conditions of internalization, and how the internalization in the critical zone can only lead to secularization.
We have only how many minutes left? 10 minutes left. Just a super quick intervention. Before, I actually was exchanging some texts with my colleague Matthew here. Zoe Todd's work was mentioned in regards to the ocean law, and specifically the role of indigenous thought and so on there. And I diagonally then read her short paper around this, where she is very critical of Latour, specifically because there is, of course, there are other imaginaries than our Western kind of, you know, Euclidean one. Yeah, let's call it so, doesn't matter. You know, the quantification, analysis, dilution, and so on, and understanding. And so we have to really, really, I think, take those into account, because they all, in many, many cases, are exactly what we are talking about, and very systemic in their approach, holistic, and coming from experience. Yeah. So we worked a lot also in the north with the Inuit communities, and we've kind of gone through that process ourselves. And we know still nothing, but a little bit of exposure to those kind of knowledges is critical for our platform. So anyway, my quick intervention.
Yeah, just also a comment from my side in the context of what was spoken just here, in this context here, and also reflecting on what was the motivation of the modern planet. I mean, it does resonate with modern human, and it's not just scaling up to the planet, but it also relates to how our planet matters to different inhabitants of the planet. And what we're talking about here now, and especially today, was in the context of factualities. So because we're all dealing with data, it's actually, I mean, that's the foundation of most of our work, which is mostly used then in the context of interests. So the industry, the states, that's how the factuality is mainly represented in today's reality. However, the reason we invited John to, I mean, in the editorial agency to this effort of understanding the planet was also bringing in not the criticality, but concerns. So the critical zones, the understanding of our planet through the planetary concerns was really important for us. And then out of that, the whole matters of justice and matters of care. So how can we repair what was already damaged? How can we take care of what remained? However, the whole the ecosystem of mattering, what resonates with me most are the matters of hope. And not our hope, but the hope of the remainings of the planet. So in this context of the ocean, because maybe the ocean is alien to us, but ocean is very much familiar with us. And the way ocean can hope for itself, I mean, also refers to the planet as sensorium. I mean, I just hope that the ocean and the planet can deal with us through the hope, and that, let's say, our efforts can contribute to that. So overcoming the powerlessness of the factuality, the powerlessness of interests and concerns and justice, because these are all very anthropocentric concepts, and they're failing. And at the end, what remains to the ocean is only that it hopes that we come up with something that the ocean survives, at least us. So that would be, let's say, just a reflection a bit from where the modern planet thinking comes from, and trying to understand the whole, let's say, larger epistemology and ontology, but again, not just for us, not just for the modern human, but for the modern planet in this context. I hope it makes sense.
Very much. Maybe a last question from the ground, somebody? No? Any question among the panelists to others, maybe? No?
I just wanted to comment a little bit on the sound that we heard from John, because it's quite nice, without just hearing people talking, but then we just hear the planet talking and all the things on the planet talking, and the shipping and the whales and everything like that. And so I thought that was quite nice to take a moment to not hear human voices, but just to hear this sound of the planet. But I was sitting there thinking, I want to ask this question, but what do they ever, it's a bit like, I suppose, gamma ray bursters. Do these people ever actually hear the sound of a test, or are there no tests? That was just piquing my curiosity.
Of course, there have been tests. The latest nuclear test has been underground in the Korean Peninsula, in the north of the Korean Peninsula.
Okay.
I think 3 years ago. And
okay. So it's that length of time that they have to monitor it.
Well, they have. The CTBTO is the effort through which maybe the concerns about our planet regarding the atomic mastering by humans is put in place as an institution. We have a treaty that bans nuclear tests, but we need to enforce it. So there's a global system of alarm. And we have data that is constantly moving. And that goes back decades. Every scientist in the CTBTO is trying really hard to understand what that thing is. And they, of course, when there's a seismic event, they need to be able to say whether it was an earthquake, was it a volcano erupting, was it a meteorite, or was it an atomic explosion? So there is something that they are trying to model within that data. And it's a signal noise problem. It's a typical artistic problem.
I mean, it was also mentioned yesterday that global heating is causing tectonic changes. So I just want to say how much I appreciated having that 2 minutes of sound. That's all.
One super last, you mentioned sentiency before, the sentient ocean, and I cannot help myself not to think about Stanislaw Lem's Solaris and what Solaris as a sentient ocean and a planet, right? It was a planet ocean, did to the humans observing it with their memory and so on. So I think that's a great read, or those who want to watch the beautiful Tarkovsky movie, you can watch that too, connected to today's panel, because it actually talks about certain things that we were talking about, even constructions, imagination, and so on.
So one very last comment, and if there is an answer needed, I will ask you to make it short, please.
Yeah, thank you. I have a comment, but I better ask a question to Micha and to everyone who wants to answer this. So what do you think about any new formats, how we can communicate this topic with wider audiences? Because all what you present today, all what I saw is just amazing. I mean, it's beyond any expectations. How is this fantastic to see it here? But how can we really influence on wider groups? Because it's obvious that museum format or conference, it's not enough. So we need to go somewhere else. And I'm interested, like Micha and possibly Marco, all of you, do you see any path? Where should we think forward?
So at this moment, we are still in the first year. And for now, we are just exploring, so going wide as possible, learning from all the speakers, all participants. And what we are looking at in the next phase, we would like to identify an urgency. So what we should really focus on. What's really the urgent question here, because we don't understand it yet. And that's why we're organizing all the workshops with all the artists, all thinkers, all scientists, engineers. So next step is going to be at Ars Electronica Festival, with quite large part of the exhibition on Modern Planet, with conference, with talks, with workshops. So we're still going to learn. And then next year, we will try to identify this urgency. And the question is then where to situate this urgency. That's going to be a crucial question for us. Is it a legal question? Or is it geography? Or are specific actors? We don't know yet. And that's where it's going to matter where we can do these kind of things. And definitely it's not going to be in galleries, museums, because that's limited capacity. We don't know yet. But at that moment, it's going to be urgent where to go. But at the same time, we share this planet. So it's not just our effort. We just have a project. But anyone can contribute. Anyone can host our activities. Anyone can join our activities in different ways, different formats. Can use our tools, our work with our artists on the project, show the results, tell the story. We do everything in shared context. So, yeah.
Can I comment, just to be maybe more precise what I mean? So, do you think that it's important to engage government or private companies or schools, to go there to convince them that's the, or do someone of you do this or believe in it, or it's not so, not so urgent, or it's urgent?
Yes. Yes. At least for me, questions still remains. So, definitely yes, all of them. Because we are developing educational programs. So modules on one side for students, for artists. So Ars Electronica is more engaged in schools. Some of us more work with artists, other work more with thinkers. So we do educate, we do train, we do share our ideas, we publish, we organize this kind of events, inputs, outputs, everything. But at the same time, I mean, governments, yes, but I mean, especially this last, I mean, I would more look talking to the ocean and ocean talking to me or the project than governments. I mean, I lost hope in governments in a way. They failed us. They failed the ocean. They failed the planet. So I don't think they are the most important ones here. But that's very personal opinion. Maybe you. Yeah.
I'm really sorry, but I am going to have to invite you to continue the discussion, maybe in front of one last beer. And thank you very much to all of you for attending this symposium, to Délégation Wallonie-Bruxelles for harboring us, and to all the persons who took part in making this symposium happen. Have a nice evening and see you around one last beer, maybe.
Thank you.